of the land to be conserved. So the word conservation suggests preservation, but the word subdivision suggests development. It's not intended to prevent, the conservation subdivisions are not intended to prevent development, but to allow development that will preserve a certain amount of undisturbed land. Furthermore, the regulations for both conservation subdivisions and Floyd's Fork Overlay District are guidelines or recommendations. They're not requirements. They are preferred methods of development in an environmentally sensitive area. With Stapleton Ridge, some of the things that we're doing to comply with the conservation subdivision are the required buffers on Floyd's Fork, Aiken Road, this is the scenic corridor, and the wetlands. We provide a buffer for all of those. The density of our proposal, I believe it's still at 3.36 dwellings per acre, which is less than the maximum permitted density of 4.84 dwellings per acre in an R4 zoning district, which is what this area is. Furthermore, Transportation Review and MSD have given preliminary approval of this project, and we aim to preserve a lot of open space. So the Land Development Code, the section on conservation subdivisions is Chapter 7. So a conservation subdivision's relationship to the comprehensive plan is to provide a balance between well-designed residential development, meaningful open space conservation, and natural resource protection. Sorry, I need to find in my notes where I am. Okay. And so the definition of a conservation subdivision, I need to fix that spacing. It is a continuous area of land to be planned and developed as a single entity in which buildings are accommodated under more flexible standards, such as building range setbacks, than those normally be applied following conventional subdivision regulations, allowing for the flexible grouping of structures in order to conserve open space and existing natural resources, which is what Redwood is doing with Stapleton Ridge. The zoning requirements for conservation subdivisions are mostly the R zones. We are an R4, and the minimum area of the subdivision shall be no less than 5 acres, which we are well above, and contain a minimum of 5 units. We have 214 units at the moment, so we meet that minimum area. So 7.11.5, the applicant shall maintain critical natural areas by designing the site with sensitivity. We are doing that. And then basically all the criteria set forth in the Land Development Code is to ensure the project is appropriate for the site's natural, historic, and cultural features, and it meets the objectives of this regulation. I think there is a slide missing. But so some of the design standards are lots and buildings must be clustered as to minimize negative impacts on the natural, scenic, and cultural resources. And then whenever possible, open space shall connect with existing or potential open space. And the clusters shall be sited to achieve several goals. Right. Thank you. Sorry, I had a slide with all of these things, so I'm not sure what happened to it, but I'll figure that out. But so basically, the conservation areas are meant to minimize disturbance of woodlands, wetlands, grasslands, mature trees, and slopes the conservation areas that Stapleton Ridge is going to have preserved designated wetland areas as well as steep slopes. As I approved all pavements, has approved our plans, and then all pavements will be permeable pavements, and we also have a large bioswale to help with that. And I need to upload a PDF as well, but the areas that we have left as conservation areas incorporate a lot of the bat habitats that a lot of the neighbors are worried about. So Chapter 3 is the Development Review Overlay District. This one is called the Floyd's Fork Overlay District. Development Review District is essentially a overlay shown on a zoning district map, and it provides a second level of development standards in addition to the other ones that are already listed. The purpose of the district is to protect the quality of the natural environment, and the district achieves these purposes by promoting compatible development land and structures. There are several regulated activities. I think I uploaded the wrong presentation because there are several slides missing, so I do apologize for that. But there are several regulated activities, many of which we are following, including, several of which there are standards, and essentially we are following them. A couple of them we're not. But again, all of these are just guidelines and not requirements. Sorry, I've lost the screen. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I've lost the presentation. Alrighty. So essentially, Stapleton Ridge is following all of the requirements set forth in both of the conservation subdivisions and in the Floyd's Fork Overlay District. And I think that's actually the rest of my presentation without the things that are missed in the slides. Okay.
All right, cool. I was going to say something and I totally just blanked out. Will you just pay attention to my part of the presentation, and if there's things that I run over too many times, especially if it's for the missing slides here, would you let me know?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. Video is on. And share content. I'm sorry, I'm just uploading mine at the moment as well. And okay, it is. I'm sorry, I totally did a boo-boo and did not upload early. Cool. All right, here we go. All right. Commissioners, thank you for your attention thus far. My name is Pierce Stevenson, and I am the commercial representative for Redwood Development Company. We are here this evening.
My motion is
Stapleton Ridge.
Okay, Jake says
Located at 15528 Aiken Road in Louisville, Kentucky. So just a brief overview of my portion of the presentation here. The first part will be relatively quick. The commission is authorized to decide on the Stapleton Ridge application. I just would like to remind the commission that they have the full power and authority to do so. But then we will quickly move to parts 2 and 3. Part 2 is that development of Stapleton Ridge exceeds compliance minimums with the Land Development Code and accounts for Louisville's future. And part 3 is our commercial belief that our commercial belief as Redwood that housing and access to nature should be available for all and not just for some. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. So the commission, I'm very sorry, this font with the N that just dropped is not how my PowerPoint is. Maybe it's a little small of a screen. Apologies. So the commission has the authority and the duty to decide our application pursuant to state statute, because the commission decides on subdivision applications and permits. So a reasoned decision is both required and it is a duty for you to find so. Of course, further deferring decisions are also allowed, but it is squarely within your authority to decide. But now comes to the more non-legal aspects of our application and why you should grant it in our favor. Redwood Development is committed to going above and beyond mere compliance. Stapleton Ridge complies with and exceeds the Land Development Code's requirements, benefiting both residential development and environmental conservation by seeking to develop a conservation subdivision rather than a typical subdivision whose development is strictly compliant pursuant to R4 zoning regulations according to the comprehensive plan. So this is just a brief outline of the zoning and land development codes that specifically affect Stapleton Ridge, especially our redesign and in accounting for environmental conservation. So 15528 Aiken Road is designated R4, which allows for the construction of single-family homes and construction of a typical subdivision. To be deemed a conservation subdivision, I believe Natalie touched on this a little earlier, certain environmental and developmental protocol must be followed, particularly related to the clustering of homes and connectivity to open space or nature. So trails can connect to other trails, for example, and conservation space can connect to conservation space on abutting properties. So here is our original draft plan. This was opposed to, and we have some other, and we have changed this in some pretty significant ways, which we'll detail momentarily. The original draft plan, though, I must mention, had designated 3 out of 4 possible spaces as non-buildable and designated those areas instead as conservation spaces. So even before we redesigned the development, it still met open space requirements or conserved space requirements. So what has changed? Further clustering, installation of a nature trail, enlargement of a now singular pond. That is the central pond. That is almost triangular in shape. We plan to connect those two to the property's abutting edge and have a deeper bioswale as well. And there was a substantial reduction in impervious surfaces. Go ahead and turn your mic on really fast.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Me, Pierce?
Yes.
I don't know if we actually changed the 100-foot buffer. I think it's the same as the original, just to clarify.
Okay. I can go ahead and change that. Let's see.
Just so they don't get confused. We didn't change the buffer, but it does meet, or it exceeds
the requirement for the stream side buffer.
Was
but
it
just I don't
always
want
100
to.
feet?
What'd you say?
Was it always 100 feet, or didn't enlarge it or anything?
We didn't enlarge it. No.
Did not enlarge. Okay.
Thank you. You're doing great.
No. Thank you. I just want to make sure I'm not lying to people. All right. All right. So let's do what question. Okay. So on redesign, Stapleton Ridge goes beyond mere compliance with code requirements and overlay guidelines regarding conservation and open space requirements by designating 54% of the total lot as conservation space. Clustering was employed both times to maximize conservation space in the area's livability. So here is our current plan. Thank you, Mark. Sorry, I'm just writing this down as I go. All right. All right. So this shows our current design overlaid atop of the former design. So this compliance measure with the LDC provides incidental benefits. So the compliance measure I'm referring to is having this high amount of open space. So the incidental benefits in the form are come to the developer in the form of lot bonuses, and this is pursuant to land development code provisions. However, our priorities, Redwood's priorities, are not focused solely on the bonuses themselves, but rather to use those land use bonuses in a reasonable way. The development code provisions give a 10% lot bonus to developable square footage and an additional bonus allowing 40% of Stapleton Ridge's lot to develop attached housing units. So this would justify the construction of multifamily homes. So, however, clustering residential housing further than what you see before you here, it would justify, like I said before, apartments or other types of multifamily housing, but the construction of those portions are actually in violation of LDC Chapter 7, 11.5a, the design standards for conservation subdivisions regarding incompatible use. Stapleton Ridge seeks single-family residential development, not apartments, and that's part of our commitment to the environment, right? It's going to be lower impact for less families in that sort of condensed space and in this context. So even the condominiums that are proposed are still single-family residences in this case, and attached units are, as the future plan will once again show, are going to substantially outnumber attached units. So when you take these things together, the fact of Stapleton Ridge's extent of non-development at 54% of the land being designated as a conservation area, developing the attached and detached lots are reasonable. Thus, denying this application on grounds of adverse and unmitigated impacts would not otherwise be in accordance with law in terms of the development itself. I will touch on the environmental impacts in just a moment, but I would like to show that the map did not upload completely. So the areas that are in white and linear are roads. I'll try and re-upload this again, but there are going to be houses throughout. I don't even really know how to describe this. Has anybody not seen the map yet? Like, I'll try and reload this, but I don't want to spend time talking about, trying to describe something like this without a road. All right. So if you can imagine roads here, we actually removed 2 cul-de-sacs, an input road, and to the south side as well. We have enlarged You need to run.
Hey, Pierce, I'm going to try and upload a PDF of just the map, like just a photo, so you can then go through it, okay?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Appreciate that.
So Pierce, let me jump in here for a couple things, if that's all right. What I was trying to say there is when you do it, I mean, yes, people may have seen it, but you need to describe what's going on. I mean, I understand right now you can't do it because the entire map didn't upload, but when you do, there you go. That looks pretty.
Yeah, good job.
Great.
Charlotte.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
So, but you do need to describe what's going on rather than just say, well, you've seen this before, because, some people in the hearing might not have seen it before, and you can't always count on, the commissioners having, done all their homework. Sometimes they're busy and they, are coming in and getting, the applicant to walk through this at one time. Also, I'm going to have to jump off here in just a bit because I'm trying to get these mortgages and foreclosures lectures done. But let me say a couple things. One, obviously, is that, this is sort of a first effort at practicing, and y'all are going to need to get everything uploaded ahead of time. And also, just do more practicing, be more fluid with it, more familiar with it. I know it's a little disconcerting when your presentation and your slides aren't matching and you're wondering what's going on with that and so forth. But one thing I would suggest is up here on the top left, it says open session menu. It's the three horizontal white lines, right? Does everybody see what I'm doing?
Yes, yeah, I can see it.
Okay, can you see where it says start recording?
Yep.
Do you get that capacity?
Yep.
Oh, somebody just started doing it. Okay, so my suggestion is you don't have to keep recording this one because this is just your first effort. I would, if I were y'all, in your next round of practice, record and then go back and sort of self-critique and critique each other because that's going to make you even better.
Sounds good.
Yeah. But I like the slides. I like the framing. Those sorts of things. It's just you're just going to need more practice. I mean, for one, you're doing it online, which is different. But also, you're still. I mean, you're still several days out, and so that's this is the right time to be pulling it together. But I just think you're going to need to just make it more smoother and more compelling. I mean, if you think you're trying to convince the decision makers, and so you want to you want to have it just sort of flow seamlessly and also with a fair amount of passion. You don't want to sort of say, well, and here on this slide we're doing this, and here on that slide we're doing that. Right? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. So great work. Kudos to y'all for getting together on a Sunday afternoon online and doing this. And like I said, the visuals look great and the framing looks great, and you're really focused on the law. Now it's just a matter of polishing up the presentation, I think.
Excellent. Well, that's I guess that's why we're here today. So we'll go and get that done.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Professor.
Bye.
Thank you. Pierce, I can't figure out how to upload the map. Do you want me to try?
I mean, it's okay. It's like I think we can upload like multiple things. I may just need to like have some backup just in case, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, even though that it was supposed to be like, that was the part where I asked if everybody's seen the map before. That was actually supposed to be off the record, even though I was supposed to be out of, pretend mode. So, but that's something that we didn't really consider before. I didn't consider before. So I'll just try and upload it again. So where am I at now? Yes, so you can see how the design has changed. We have installed the nature trail to the south, and that means we have removed 2 cul-de-sacs and an input road as we have developed the trail, or at least the plan for this trail. That is the significant. Sorry, that's the law. I can change the wording, I guess, but the must and should, the duty and the requirement are one and the same. But I can change the wording if it came off like me being their mom. Okay. I'll ease up. You are saying I'm terrible. Look, I'm not trying to keep it. All right, Connor, see you, dude. But I'll try to keep this a little bit shorter. So you can see the design changes. Let's go ahead and skip that. Taken together because of Stapleton Ridge's extent of non-development, developing attached and detached lots in this way are reasonable and comply with local land use regulations. Thus, denying this application on grounds of adverse and unmitigated development impacts would risk being not otherwise in accordance with law. All right, so do I need to re-upload the same thing? Here we go.
No. Okay.
Share?
You should be able to go into share, and then it should already be there.
I see it. Okay.
Yeah, and then if you just click on it and then share now.
There we go. Okay, and this is where we were. All right.
I will say it is doing something really weird with the PowerPoints, so I'm glad we figured this out.
Yeah, for sure. See you, Mark. Have a good one. Okay. I would like to spend a few minutes discussing the issue of the floodplain and the Floyd's Fork overlay. The light blue color on this logic map here represents an area, and this is Stapleton Ridge, our area that is within the 100-foot floodplain. FEMA, who oversees floodplain designation, frequently redraws floodplain maps to reflect any changes in local conditions, whether those changes occurred through construction, mitigation, or natural disaster. To make up for development that falls within a portion of the floodplain, the developer will provide a hydrologically equivalent volume of floodplain storage with a series of ponds containing runoff. So what that actually means is that as long as we have adequate measures in place that reduce runoff from development occurring in the floodplain, then we can still develop in that floodplain because sufficient mitigation measures would have been taken. Essentially, when FEMA comes through and redraws the maps, this place will be designated outside of the 100-year floodplain, and it will relieve issues with flood insurance, but we'll touch on that momentarily as well. MSD, the body responsible for watershed management here in Louisville Metro, has given preliminary approval to the water management system for our plan. Once development is completed, it would no longer lie within the FEMA 100-year floodplain, and this would likely be reflected on the next FEMA map. Most importantly, the fact that it is out of the floodplain ensures that residents and residencies here will not have to be required to purchase flood insurance. So here, this map, our development on top of this map, the substantial amount of non-buildable land was facilitated by clustering the properties a little bit further, combining and increasing. Sorry, I'm going to go back to this map even though it's incomplete. Combining and increasing the overall size and depth of this pond or the bioswale, reducing the overall area of impermeable surfaces, and that's in the reduction of roads, higher connectivity between roads, and the removal of cul-de-sacs and the input road. And we have planted more trees, as you can see, with bat boxes to ensure that the migratory corridor of the endangered species is accounted for.
What do you mean by input road? Sorry to keep asking questions.
It is absolutely fine. There was a road that kind of went to nowhere down here on the original map. Let me see.
Can you point to it?
Right here. I don't know. Or can I point it?
No. Oh, yeah. Oh, I actually never even saw that. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Something they had like asked for because it had something to do with future development in the lot south of it.
Okay.
But the community or the planning commission does not seem to actually be worried about it anymore. So I think it's fine.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks, Fear.
Yeah. Okay. So these measures capture, retain, and filter runoff. Similarly, our additional design efforts to reduce runoff complements our pre-approval by MSD, which permits and monitors stormwater runoff as part of its services. I must stress to the Commission that the overlay issues recommendations, not requirements, which differentiates it from other parts of the Land Development Code. So, in sum, Redwood is committed to sensible single-family development. Both current and former plans comply with LDC in full, with the conservation subdivision elements nearly in full. Our current plan exceeds overlay recommendations and requirements from the Development Code through our reduction in impermeable surface space by removing the cul-de-sacs and generally keeping things more interconnected. The increased size, depth of the bioswale, more trees, and accounting for endangered species of the trees. 30% conservation space is recommended at rock bottom where greater than 50%. And the ecosystem services offered by the bioswale, the pond, trees, measuring, it's very hard to quantify the exact amount of their dollar value, but they provide filtration, soil stability, and other ecological beneficial services. Redwood has met and exceeded these requirements while accounting for the public interest in environmental conservation. Taken together, although development is occurring in a floodplain, our minimize and mitigate approach is sufficient for purposes of developing 15528 Aiken Road, and thus Stapleton Ridge's permit should not be denied on grounds of floodplain housing construction. We prioritize conservation in these ways in particular. I believe I've mentioned it before, and I won't take too much of the Commission's time. Man, that's going to bother me about the maps. Here are a couple of pictures of. Here's an example of a bat box to the right photo. On the left will be the educational signage. We propose some similar signage for the nature trail to generally educate the public and to raise awareness about endangered species in the Floyd's Fork or Stapleton Ridge area. Okay. Redwood Development is looking to Louisville's future in housing. Our design of Stapleton Ridge is such to accommodate Metro's proposed future population projections, trends in housing development, and Metro's conservation policy initiatives. Put simply, we are builders that care about the environment, thus allowing us as Redwood to develop Stapleton Ridge as a conservation developer rather than strictly adhering to the overlay is a better decision in our case. We have to start with it. We have to start with our customer base. We have a very target consumer in mind. Stapleton Ridge is developed with a range of residents in mind, but we are mainly catering to empty nesters and retirees, people that want to settle down and live a little bit more in tune with nature. Maybe those that do not have to commute to the city center every day in order to work these residential and natural settings are consistent with the vision that's set out in the 2040 Comprehensive Plan for Floyd's Fork. This is recommendation 30, subsection A and subsection C for the 2040 Comprehensive Plan of Floyd's Fork. Subsection A, which is denoted in blue, seeks to establish a new low-impact subdivision standard and to enhance ecological design. So, seeking a better sort of fit with the environment is one of the goals that this recommendation seeks to accomplish. Subsection C, as denoted in green, seeks pre-application site design review for all subdivision proposals in the Floyd's Fork area in order to identify and recommend modifications that would enhance protection. So with these goals in mind, Commissioners, Stapleton Ridge aims to innovate and to be an example for future development in the area. I think that you will find that as a result of the analyses that are about to follow, they likely align to some of your intuitions and just general local knowledge just by being a resident of Jefferson County. And please keep in mind, the current area is zoned as just a typical subdivision, single-family house area. There is no requirement for this for development to take into the account for the environment at all. So, and in our opinion, on Redwood's opinion, allowing development of a typical R4 zone in this particular area fails to consider the adverse environmental effects of that construction, even though typical subdivision development is non-compliant with the overlay, but compliant with the provisions of the Land Development Code. Excessive compliance with overlay requirements should not be grounds to deny our application solely on the notion that our application is not exceedingly compliant enough with the totality of the issues that were submitted by members of the public or by planning recommendation staff. The alternative would eventually, in Redwood's opinion, would eventually allow for the development of typical R4 residents in this area due to increased housing need. And development on environmentally sensitive lands at this point would be justified if the need would be great enough. So, allowing Redwood to establish a conservation subdivision thus would help in avoiding this unnecessary and preventable issue. Population and housing projections support our specific development in this context, with the goal of establishing a low-impact development standard and accounting for environmental sensitivity. So the population of Kentucky, and this is Kentucky generally, is growing. So by 2040, we will see a 10% increase in our population, or a little over 460,000 people. And Jefferson County is supposed to rise the greatest out of all of other Kentucky counties. That makes sense. We are the largest metropolitan area and one of only two big metropolitan areas in the state. So this totally colloquially makes sense. It is going to be an increase, though, a pretty substantial number of 111,000. That's nearly 25% of all new individuals in the population. There's also going to be a large aging in the population. So the population of Louisville Metro has become generally older, and this corresponds with total reductions in fertility during the period and the age in births and aging of the baby boomer generation. Something startling is that as of 2010, there were greater number of persons aged 60 and over residing in the metro area than there were 18 and under. This is actually kind of a startling number because a lot of people will be retiring at the same time. But for our case, we need to be able to house and have the availability to house the people that would decide to live in Stapleton Ridge or to stay in the metro area generally. So the parklands of Floyd's Fork, so this housing market area is projected to gain about 8,500 or so people between 2010 and 2040. But this is a 66% increase in the population as of 2010. So this is the largest percentage change in total population of all housing market areas in Louisville Metro. So think about it this way. Kentucky is supposed to increase 10%. The largest portion of that goes to Jefferson County. The largest portion of Jefferson County's residents, or in terms of population increase, so it's not in total number, but it has the largest and sharpest increase in the population of all housing market areas in Jefferson County. The Parklands of Floyd Fork is projected to add an additional 3,000 households as well, but I will touch upon that in a moment. So there's the question of why allow this neighborhood here. What the Housing and Urban Development Cabinet tells us is that Louisville is building. First of all, the economic conditions pre-coronavirus have encouraged the construction of homes. The greatest demand for these homes are going to be valued at less than $300,000, somewhat in between $200,000 and $300,000. Rental markets are also expected to rise in demand because of the increased population. And currently, in particular, the largest rental housing market area is near U of L's Shelby campus. Put another way, new residence construction is trending to the east. Indeed, Floyd's Fork in particular is set for a sharp increase of households in that area. So, here we go. Yes. So 3,456 more households by the time 2040 comes around, and a 70% increase represents the largest change in households of all housing market areas. So again, the largest increase in households proportionally in the state is going to occur in the Floyd's Fork area. So this slide shows the Shelby campus. That is the pin drop here. And the red circle here represents where Stapleton Ridge is to be developed. Thus, the housing market suggests that new housing development is trending eastward. Population projections suggest that Kentucky, Jefferson County, and Floyd's Fork will see sharp increases in their population relative to its 2010 numbers, and that the local population in Metro, I'm sorry, I skipped a line, and that the housing market that we are trying to build in currently is zoned R4. So the future is projecting that the largest rental market in the area here and sales market in the areas nearby is trending eastward. So this will actually, allowing us to develop as a conservation subdivision, will actually provide a framework for future development that may occur along Floyd's Fork at a later time. The numbers also show that the need will be projected as well, but that's beyond the scope of this assignment. So this is just a quick recap for the commission. Kentucky and Metro are expected to increase in population. Retirees, empty nesters, and other aged populations will be high in number. Remember that there was more over 60 in 2010 versus people 18 and under. Economic conditions support residential development, which is trending eastward, whether that's for sale or for rent. The Floyd's Fork market area will increase in both total population and the number of households. We are currently zoned R4, and that Floyd's Fork overlay, the overlay itself suggests guidelines and recommendations and not requirements. To put it succinctly, Redwood Development believes that living alongside nature should be available to all, and that developers can be sensitive to conservation goals, affordability, and set an example for future developers. We are proud to work with the community and Metro government to collaborate towards successful and environmentally sensible housing development. The alternative would eventually allow for the development of typical R4 residential housing in this area. With development encroaching eastward towards environmentally sensitive land, that the lack of space will eventually result in housing need at the cost of environmental conservation. Thus, allowing Redwood to establish a conservation subdivision assists in avoiding this preventable issue by setting an example towards future development actions. That affordable single-family housing and environmental conservation are not mutually exclusive concepts. Our plan considers market forces and population projections. By building a conservation subdivision rather than its typical counterpart, Redwood is fulfilling a growing demand for housing in the metro area. This demand will be met while expressly considering the impacts that such development will cause, and to minimize and mitigate any adverse environmental impacts therefrom. The prices of Stapleton Ridge's houses will fulfill projected housing need and thus diversify the community in the Floyd's Fork housing market area. Moreover, our plan considers and alleviates environmental concerns from community members by our conservation space designation at 54%. This 54%, which was facilitated by clustering properties, combining the overall size and depth of the bioswale, and additional runoff mitigation design efforts. It complements our pre-approval by the Metro Sewer District, which permits and monitors stormwater runoff as part of its services. And the reduction of impermeable surface space replaced by trees and conservation space as per community request. I believe I mentioned those earlier. And back boxes and the planting of additional trees and signage to raise awareness, provide education, and provide stable migratory housing for an endangered species. So I said that we would be a guide, and in order for me to show the commission the difference our housing is going to be, it's the housing that's already there needs to be shown as well. The projected housing need and the makeup of the population will simply not allow for properties similar to what is currently near the Stapleton Ridge area. The need will be too great. For example, our financial department found a few of the homes that were valued for sale there. The one on the left, it may be a little bit difficult to see, but we have a sale price or a value price of $1.7 million. Similarly, $1.2 million. Here we're getting a little bit smaller, but we are all around the $500,000 mark for these houses. And on the lower end of the housing that was for sale, we are around $350,000 or so. Remember, our goal is to provide housing that is connected to nature and that are at prices that residents of all demographic backgrounds and income makeups and retirements can afford. So this is what we envision instead. There are going to be yards, there are going to be small yards, but the houses and the condos themselves will be big enough to have a single family residence and clustered close enough to minimize environmental impacts, which we've mitigated through other design changes therefrom. Taken together, Redwood's plan is reasonable in terms of development in this area. The market forces on the left, such as population increase, aging population as well, the greatest demand for homes and the prices of those homes, the current average price of the market, the trends in development, and the opportunity to influence shows that that Redwood is an innovative leader in housing and constructing conservation subdivisions and become a leader in this particular part of the industry. The column to the right for our conservation just again lists the changes that we have made to a design that was already in compliance with the land development code itself. That concludes my presentation on behalf of Redwood Development Corporation. Thank you for your attention, commissioners, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have. Okay, I'm done.
Woo! Good job.
Thank you. All right, so we can go ahead. Would you like me to keep this up? I can take this down and we can just communicate. Yeah.
Actually, there were two PDFs that I wanted to kind of show that I forgot I had part of my presentation. But so this was from the Red Wing Wetland Survey, and so obviously the yellow line is what Redwood or Stapleton Ridge is going to be. And then so for the potential gray bat, they mostly just they forage down where all the blue lines are. Mostly it's just around or on any of the water within the property. And our projected plans will have very minimal impacts and don't need to be mitigated. The effects of those plans don't need to be mitigated. Now, for the Indiana bat, which is what the majority of neighbors have concerns about, the habitat you can see is like the red area, which a lot of that area is within our conservation areas, so that's helpful. And then also there is they use it as their summer habitat, so we can manage their habitat by limiting the clearing to unoccupied period between October 16th and March 31st. Or basically we could talk with the USFWS and do a memorandum of agreement where we pay basically per acre that we're destroying. So those are two of the things we can do. But overall, the proposed neighborhood will not be affecting a lot of their actual habitat. And then this is the Floyd's Fork, or the Floyd's Fork Environmental Association, their letter that they gave, basically approving of our project. They're actually pretty excited, especially with the changes that we're doing, which is going to be the improved street connectivity and the walking trails. Also, they mention that conservation subdivision regulations help retain open space and lower density. And as I mentioned, we are well below the allowed density. And then we are conserving at least 50% when we're only required 30. Basically, FFEA is really excited about the plans we're doing and think that we're going to be a good model for other developments to emulate. And as much as they would like to retain the land, they realize that development's coming, and most of the plans that we're making will likely be approved by all the necessary agencies, so they understand that the project will likely go forward. Again, they said Stapleton Ridge appears to be the best model they've seen in terms of the overlay district and for cluster development. So, they're really excited about what we're doing, and we agree that hopefully what we're doing can be a goal for other development to follow.
Okay.
in terms of protecting the area and conserving Oids Fork.
Right on. That sounds great. Okay. Does anybody have any questions for us? No questions?
Honestly, I think it was really good.
All right. Well, all right then. I mean, we definitely went like way over on time, so maybe that's something we're going to have to work on our end. But there's also like, the problem of technology. I'll just re-upload the thing and see what happens, and if not, we can just find a workaround. Cool.
Yeah, that sounds good. If you need me to send that map in like a different format, like a JPEG or something instead, I can do that.
I mean, sure. Didn't you already put it in a JPEG format, though, I thought.
Oh, I don't know if I sent it as a PDF or just let me know if you need it in a different format.
Yeah, totally. Could you send it to me in just PDF format, just in case? I'm going to see if I can patch it on. Yeah, see if maybe it's easier for the system to read.
Cool.
But other than that, I'm not going to keep y'all here on your Sunday any longer than you already have been. If there's no questions, I appreciate you all coming and paying attention and like taking time out of everyone's busy remote life. So as usual, if there's anything, just shoot me a phone call, text, email, whatever. I'm available. Social distancing has me very lonely, so just say hello. That is fine too. And I'm just kidding. It's fine. Anyway, enjoy your afternoon. Great meeting. Thanks a lot.
Thank you all so much for joining.
Thanks, guys.
I'll email everybody about a second meeting and just to see if anybody wants to do it.
Cool.
All right.
All right, sounds good.
Bye, everyone.
Happy Sunday. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.